Ted Bundy is undeniably one of the most infamous and chilling names in the world of true crime. His very name has become a symbol of manipulation, brutal violence, and the terrifying ability to deceive and charm those around him. Over the years, Bundy was able to maintain a facade of being an intelligent, charismatic, and well-spoken individual, all while harboring the dark secrets of a serial killer. What made his case even more horrifying was his ability to blend into society and gain the trust of his victims, making him one of the most elusive and enigmatic criminals in history. For years, Bundy managed to evade capture, leaving behind a growing trail of victims across multiple states and confusing law enforcement at every turn. His crimes were cold, calculated, and disturbingly methodical, each one seemingly more horrific than the last. What made him so terrifying was not just his brutality, but his ability to manipulate and deceive not only his victims, but the very people who were tasked with catching him. Bundy took pride in the fear he instilled, and he reveled in the chaos he caused, which only heightened the sense of horror surrounding his story. Early life and background. Ted Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, under peculiar circumstances. His mother, Louise Bundy, was unmarried when she gave birth to Ted, and for many years, he believed that his mother was his sister and that his grandparents were his parents. This confusing upbringing would play a significant role in the formation of Bundy's twisted psyche. Growing up in an environment where his true identity was hidden, Bundy struggled with feelings of alienation. However, he was also highly intelligent, charming, and charismatic, a combination that would later help him lure his victims. As a young man, Bundy presented himself as the ideal image of a well-rounded, educated, and driven individual, which made him all the more dangerous. First known attacks. Bundy's reign of terror began in the early 1970s. His first known victims were young women, and he quickly developed a pattern. He would approach them, often pretending to be injured or disabled, and then overpower them once they trusted him. His charm and ability to deceive played a critical role in his attacks, as he was able to gain the confidence of his victims before turning on them with brutal violence. On January 4, 1974, Bundy struck again, this time in Washington State. He abducted an 18-year-old woman named Linda Ann Healy from her apartment. Her body was found months later, and she was one of the first confirmed victims of Bundy. It wasn't until much later that authorities connected these attacks to the same man. For months, Bundy continued to abduct women, moving across state lines and leaving no clear pattern for investigators to follow. He often targeted college campuses, where he knew young women would be alone and vulnerable. As his body count rose, the public began to fear a mysterious predator, one who seemed to slip through law enforcement's grasp with ease. The Colorado murders. By the time Bundy moved to Colorado, the scope of his crimes had escalated. In 1975, he was suspected of killing a young woman named Carol Daronch, who miraculously survived his attempt to abduct her. She managed to escape, and her description of the man who tried to abduct her became a crucial lead for investigators. Later that year, Bundy was apprehended in Utah for a separate incident involving a stolen car. Little did the authorities know that the arrest would eventually lead to Bundy's identification as the notorious serial killer they had been hunting for years. After his capture, investigators tied Bundy to several murders in Utah Colorado, and Washington, connecting the dots to his previous crimes. The escapes and trial. Even after being arrested, Bundy's reign of terror was far from over. In 1977, while awaiting trial in Utah, Bundy managed to escape from jail. He had planned the escape meticulously, using his knowledge of the legal system and his charisma to deceive those around him. After his escape, he fled to Florida, where his killing spree would take a horrifying new turn. In Florida, Bundy's attacks became even more violent. He targeted young women at Florida State University and murdered two sorority sisters, Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, in a brutal attack. After that, he kidnapped another woman, Kimberly Leach, and killed her in the woods. It was these crimes that would ultimately lead to Bundy's capture once again. The Florida murders and capture. In February of 1978, Bundy was finally caught for the last time in Florida. Authorities had been on his trail for months, and his reckless behavior in the weeks leading up to his arrest eventually led to his capture. He was spotted driving erratically, and a routine traffic stop ended with Bundy being taken into custody once again. At the time of his capture, Bundy was already suspected of numerous murders across several states. His chilling coldness, his ability to deceive, and his disturbing charm had enabled him to evade law enforcement for so long. But his time was running out. Bundy was soon indicted on multiple charges of murder, kidnapping, and sexual assault. The trial and conviction. Bundy's trial was a media spectacle. He defended himself in court, confident in his ability to charm the jury. But it quickly became clear that Bundy was not only a skilled manipulator, but also a dangerous psychopath. He was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to death. The trial exposed Bundy's cruel nature, his tendency to stalk his victims, and the depravity of his actions. As evidence of his crimes mounted, including testimonies from survivors like Carol DeRonch and other victims' families, Bundy's facade began to crack. In 1979, he was convicted and sentenced to death for the murders of two women in Florida. But Bundy remained defiant, even in the face of his inevitable execution. Over the years, he gave several interviews, during which he attempted to justify his actions and manipulate the public's perception of him. Bundy even tried to portray himself as a victim of his circumstances, playing on his troubled childhood and difficult relationships. Confessions and final days. In the years leading up to his execution, Bundy confessed to killing more than 30 women across several states. His confessions provided chilling insight into his mind, but they were often vague and self-serving, as Bundy tried to portray himself as something more than a cold-blooded killer. Bundy's final days on death row were marked by his attempts to delay his execution. He tried to negotiate with investigators and even gave authorities information about additional crimes he had committed, but it was too late. His manipulation and deception had finally caught up with him. On January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in Florida's electric chair. He was 42 years old. Bundy's death marked the end of a horrific chapter in American criminal history, but his legacy would live on in the minds of those who survived him, the families of his victims, and the millions of people who followed his case. Ted Bundy's story is one that still sends chills down our spine. A man who, for years, was able to blend into society, manipulate those around him, and commit horrific acts without being caught. His trial, his manipulative behavior, and his ability to evade the law for so long remain a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind a charming facade. Thank you for watching this chilling documentary on Ted Bundy. If you found this story as haunting as we did, please like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. The story of Ted Bundy may have ended with his execution, but the impact of his crimes will never be forgotten.